like to ask you personally, when did you get interested in interreligious relationships in your life? When did you see them as something that you thought was important to you, and why?
You know, actually, I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So Latter-day Saints were a small minority. And I had lots of conversations with friends growing up about their religion, our religion. A lot of it, of course, had a missionary motivation and on my side. But I got interested in other religions. I studied other religions to some degree, both then and later. In the Quorum of 12, I think Elder Holland, more than anyone, has played the role of kind of a diplomat to other churches, and he's kind of pulled me in on a number of events, some lunches and some meetings with ministers at which he's spoken and I've spoken. And so I by no means consider myself an expert in interreligious relations or even in comparative religion, but I have learned a lot in those years. I've watched the First Presidency of the church and how they are very respectful of other religions, how they've reached out. They've gone to events at the Cathedral of the Madeleine in Salt Lake City and other events, and they've invited ministers to meet with them and have been an example, really, of how we can be friends with other religions, even though we have our differences.
What areas of difficulty do you find within Mormon theology with respect to this problem of proselytizing and at the same time listening?
Right.
Do you find that there's a tension there, that you can be open and listen to someone else? Is it not a waste of time to listen when you've got the only true and living church?
Yes, right.
You know, how do you negotiate that, both yourself theologically and how do you see the church working that through?
I see among all the leaders whom I work with, all the members of the 12 First Presidency, they manifest a very similar attitude to Joseph Smith. They're warm, they're friendly to ministers of other faiths in particular, and don't try even to proselytize them. I mean, obviously we would if they were interested.
And there's always, as you say, there's the goodness of your life.
And there's that, and we are willing to talk doctrine with them if they want to, but if they'd rather just stay at the level of community issues and cooperation, that's fine too.
What do you find promising as you look down? We know you're not the prophet.
No, not at all.
But if you would prophesy a bit for us as a human being, what do you see as promising in the Latter-day Saint tradition that would be maybe an improvement you see coming down from increased interreligious relationships, increased interreligious dialogue? What would you see as being different for the next generation because they do more of this?
Yeah, good people who want their children to be raised in peace and without the sexual libertinism that you see and the looseness. It's causing them to pull together. And I wouldn't call it an alliance, although it could become that, but it's certainly churches and ministers and people of faith pulling together and realizing that we have more in common, at least in the public arena, than we have differences. And you can talk about theology all day long, but if you just talk about the public arena, we have a lot in common.
You see more social cooperation then as a good thing between religions who have similar values going down the road?
Certainly social cooperation. Obviously we get involved with a lot of churches on humanitarian aid and so forth, but I'm thinking specifically of working together to preserve decency in our communities, in our schools, religious freedom as really the pillar of the First Amendment. And that even some of the more liberal media finally realize that there's an issue here. Why should we be forcing this secular
Morality.
Non-morality
Non-morality.
lifestyle on youth and children and college students who don't want it. Why do we force this on people if they don't want it? And that's central to what's happening in America today. And yet there are many who, in the name of tolerance, would intolerantly force their lifestyle or their view of morality or sexuality or the family on those who have a different view. And that is a great risk, great threat to religious liberty, and something we have in common very much with many of our fellow believers in other faiths.
President Hinckley, before he died, seemed to be, to me anyhow, a master of balancing what I would call one of the strongest proselytizing programs in the world
Yes.
with an outreach program.
Yes, he was. He was a master.
Do you see that as a Mormon talent that will become better?
I'm responsible with some others for the Middle East, and we can't proselyte anywhere in the Middle East. It's just not allowed by the governments. So we don't, that arm is tied behind our back, and the arm we have is the goodwill arm. And we reach out and we have developed very good relations with Christian, Jewish, and Muslim leaders, as well as the state leaders in those countries. And I think that is important to God's church, because it shows that we are people of goodwill, and that our proselytizing effort is not meant to threaten or to compel. It's an offer to share what we have, but that we will continue to be friends and on the best possible terms with anyone of any faith.